welcome to this T&D World Quick Chat. Today, we'll be discussing challenges we see in the industry and how a reliable and robust optical communications infrastructure can help address those challenges. I'm Nikki Chandler, Editorial Director for T&D World, and today we're speaking with Seán Adam, Vice President of Strategy and Innovation at AFL. Seán, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Nikki.
Could you tell us just a little bit about your background to start off?
Sure, absolutely. So let's see. I've been with AFL and in the kind of telecommunication energy space since 2010. Before that, I was actually in the semiconductor space, so pretty much a kind of a big shift in where my focus is. My background is actually as an electrical engineer, and so that's kind of where I come from. And based actually up in the Boston area.
Oh, great. Okay. I've been in semiconductors before too, and so I really like the energy and utility space though. So I appreciate you talking to us today about that. What do you see, first off, what do you see as some of the key challenges being faced by utilities today and going forward?
Sure, absolutely. There's a set of overarching challenges that they kind of always have, or certainly have had for a number of years. So you've got aging infrastructure. They've got a very complex regulatory environment to exist within. One that exists today is cost of capital, and that's certainly making it hard for them to kind of build out projects where things are costing a lot more than when their last rate base was approved. Um, Certainly the fact that reliability really is like the number one thing that a utility has to provide, and kind of their ultimate top challenge and top deliverable. But as you look at the integration of IBR based renewables, that drives a real big challenge on keeping the network, the grid stable. Certainly growing concerns around kind of the security of the network, whether that's cyber or physical. So those are there, but now it's actually coupled with addressing this load growth. Um, it's been flat over the last decade. I think we all understand, and now we actually can't meet the demand. And so you've got that challenge of aligning, the load with the capacity with where the load and the demand is. And then the extra challenge you have is a lot of this is, folks, we talk about kind of Gen AI data centers. There's the kind of the thought about, oh, I'll get to you in a couple years with power. It doesn't really work very well when you're thinking about like a large hyperscale that wants to think in terms of weeks, not years. So a term that we've coined here, and it's because we actually do work with in the hyperscale space as well, and they tend to think about time to the first megawatt, right? How quickly can they turn up a server? Is really this kind of concept and a challenge I think the utilities have, which is time to first kilowatt, right? How do they actually deliver that kilowatt as fast as possible? And certainly there, they've got permitting and environmental challenges, environmental study challenges, right? It can be 6 to 7 years to kind of obtain all the permits to build out the grid. You've got lead time challenges within the supplier base, some over a year. You've got overall just fundamentally a workforce that's in transition here in the United States, right? We've got a lot of folks that are retiring across every industry and trying to backfill that. And of course, you've just got construction inefficiencies. And then you've got, all of these bring together, and how do they kind of get more out of the grid? It's data, and data actually is a challenge for them as well, because they have all kinds of data, right? It's not even that the utilities, I think, need more data. What they really need is ways to efficiently move it, integrate it into kind of a single source, so they can get a single picture of what the network is doing, analyzing it, and that's actually a place where certainly AI will come in. So the power they're supplying to Gen IA data centers will actually help them on the back end, and then of course being able to act on it.
Right. And all of those challenges that you mentioned, T&D World, we're in it every day. And there was just even a utility CEO this last week that said that demand is coming a lot faster, or that growth in demand is coming a lot faster than they had anticipated. So you're exactly right on that.
Absolutely.
So, what do you see then as the role that communication infrastructure could have in addressing these challenges?
Absolutely. So, now there isn't one silver bullet to addressing the challenges we just walked through. The industry and the government, there's a lot of research and investment going into, one, how do they build out new infrastructure while at the same time really working to get more out of the existing infrastructure. It really isn't kind of I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. I think for the utilities, it's very much going to have to be, I have to do both, right? I have to build new, but I also have to figure out how to get more out of what I have there because I just can't keep up with that demand and the speed of the demand. The Department of Energy, their commercial liftoff report on innovation, innovative grid deployment. They listed three key areas for kind of advanced grid solutions. That's, advanced transmission technologies, grid enhancing technologies, and that's kind of like dynamic line rating and virtual power plants, and then situational awareness and automation, right? So kind of knowing what's happening in the grid and being able to act on it. And then that report specifically calls out the fact that a foundational piece to make it possible is a robust communication infrastructure, right? You can't actually do the things we talked about, that situational awareness and automation, integrating a number and implementing a number of the grid enhancing technologies without really a strong communication infrastructure. And it's one that requires low latency, high bandwidth, highly reliable, and it's got to be bidirectional, right? I think we all know the communication grid, which, there's been communication within the grid all along, but it's been very much, slow, generally one direction. Really, to do this and give that real-time view of what's happening in the network, it actually has to be this low latency, high bandwidth, bidirectional infrastructure.
Yeah, and that report that garnered a lot of interest, and there's a lot to it. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Once again, that's the DOE liftoff report on advanced grid solutions. And so, you mentioned that the optical or the infrastructure, are there advancements being made in the optical infrastructure space that parallels what we're seeing on that electrical infrastructure side?
Absolutely. There absolutely are. If you think about kind of the concept of reconductoring and kind of asset reuse, and it's a bunch of what the liftoff report is really trying to talk about. In the electrical space, you've got technologies such as advanced conductors, that are really being looked at to provide that more of that capacity. Companies like CTC and TS Conductor are kind of names that are out there in supplying those solutions, right? But the same is actually happening on the optical side. One is, how do you increase the communication capacity, right? Aligned with that electrical capacity. So, some advancements in optical fiber and cable, we can now put 432 fibers into an optical ground wire cable in roughly the same diameter and weight as what you used to be able to put 96 fibers in. So that's over a 4x density increase in what you could do in OPGW in the transmission grid. A lot of utilities are actually, certainly deploying in the distribution grid. Sometimes they're going underground, right? We've got these significant wildfires that are happening in the West, and one of the responses there is moving underground. There you can actually leverage innovations like kind of new flexible ribbon technology, where we're actually now able to put 864 fibers in roughly the same space as you used to be able to put 144 fibers. So that's a 6x density increase. So kind of a lot of innovation has gone on, being driven by all the various markets that end up using fiber. And I think energy ends up being kind of a beneficiary of it, where we can achieve significantly more capacity in the existing space. That lets the utilities make better use of the reuse of their assets. You've got all dielectric self-supporting cable, right? So ADSS. And that actually allows the utility to unlock their supply zone to actually deploy communication, right? That means greater pole flexibility. That's easier permitting, right? We talked about permitting being this major challenge, 6 to 7 years, right? It actually eases that burden, right? And it reduces the overall installation cost. So certainly advancements in like ADSS technology, which have also gone through a similar density increases there. And then you actually have corresponding advancements in connectivity, right? Optical cables, interesting, but it actually has to connect to stuff. So there's connectivity that is there, fiber management solutions that are there, and they also really have advancements which really enable the density kind of ease of deployment to let utilities use that, use those existing assets, use the existing underground vaults or the space they have on poles or their right away. We at AFL, we've actually coined an acronym kind of for what a communication network really needs to be in the energy space. We call it SAFER, right? That stands for it's got to be sustainable, accessible, flexible, expandable, and reliable. And as we think about it, fiber is really the only future-proof medium that's able to really provide kind of a safer network. And that's one that's not only able to support, let's say, a direct connection, let's say all the way to the smart meter on the side of a home, but also actually be the backbone, let's say, to a private LTE deployment, which is what many utilities are also looking at. So there really are a lot of advancements that have happened in the communication space in both wireline through fiber and wireless enabled by fiber that are actually going to let utilities make kind of better use and keep up with the same demands that are happening on the electrical side.
Yeah, I really like that SAFER acronym. I mean, really, safety and reliability is really key for utilities. I mean, that's the top of their minds, top of their priority list. And, it does really sound like the communications infrastructure, and a really innovative one, is really the foundation for, addressing a lot of these challenges that you'd mentioned. So, that's going to be it for today. We do thank you again, Seán, for joining us. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in.
Thank you, Nikki.